Okay, so for the first question, I'm going to be doing the two questions from Chapter 7, and I'm going to be doing question 3, which is explain why incarceration rates must be taken into account in order to understand labor market inequality. So first of all, incarceration needs to be included in any statistics about population because there are 1 million people. I think it's 1.3 million people are in state prisons, and like county jails, there's around like 6,000 or something in the U.S. But it is a big enough number to where we need to include it in statistics and all these giant equations for the American population. But yeah, so it still matters. But the next part is basically statistically, there are more black males in jail than white males, and that's gonna obviously tip the labor market inequality because you're gonna have more population of this race just in general, and then you're gonna cut the other race in half by putting them in jail. And that's obviously gonna tip the scales a little bit. So some of it might not be purposely. But it's still like enough to like cause like an imbalance, I guess is what I mean. And then with saying that there's more black males in prison than white males there's a higher percentage of black males going to jail than white males, I think. And then, but it's basically saying that like if a white guy were to come out of jail and a black male and they were both going for the same job, the odds are the white person's going to get the job strictly because a few chapters ago we learned about this, about how if both of them have a criminal record, they will, like the white male has some amount of percent that he's going to get the job compared to the black male. So that can kind of, impact the wage gap between the two, but there's so many people in jail in the U.S. that you need to include them in each and every single category. And then for the next question, select 2 findings presented in Chapter 7 and explain how they evidence the intersection of race and gender in the U.S. labor market. So the first one I found was on page 169. And that's when they're talking about earnings and wage gaps, there's a little bit of differences between the two of them, but they're basically the same thing. But the earning and wage gaps are, more in relation to men and women, just males and females in general, and the gap between them. But as it turns out, for earnings gap at least, the income inequality by race and ethnicity further break down by gender. There's you take females and you pay them less than males, but you also add in if you were a black female, you would get paid substantially less than a white male. So that's kind of how they intersect. And then I believe on page 171, and what I mean by the earnings and wages gaps, just going back to it to compare and contrast, is there's the same amount of space in the gap kind of when it comes to sexism and racism, unfortunately. Colored people are not going to get paid as much as a white person, and a male or a female is not going to get paid as much as a male. That's kind of just how it is, and it needs to change, but you can't legislate it enough to where they would change it. But and the next one was on page 171. I believe that was so black, white, and Latino women have a different labor market outcome, and these vary further by level of education. So 61% of white women are employed, compared with 52% of black blacks and 55% of Hispanics. The trends are distinct for college graduates. 86% of black female college graduates are employed, compared with 82% of white females college graduates and 77% of Hispanic female graduates. Overall, black female college graduates are less disadvantaged relative to their white counterparts than our low-skilled black women. So basically, being a female and being a female of color is just going to make things twice as hard. And unfortunately, we're considered a high-functioning society, but we still have stuff like this going on. And then, so for the next question, from chapter 8, which was identify and describe three specific ways in which slavery shaped wealth inequality between black and white Americans. So, first of all, slavery kind of shaped the U.S. especially after they were freed, as to where they would go. They had nothing coming out, so it's not like they could just pack everything up, get a ticket, and move to Oregon and then north, or somewhere that's further north than where they were right now. So they just literally had to pack up, and they couldn't go far. So they all just kind of stuck to what they knew, and a lot of them continued to work on the farms. Just it was they were getting paid now. So that's kind of how they all ended up in that spot. And then also you limit their economy. If what's my train of thought? So if you were to so let's say you have a segregated area of, let's say, Chicago, and if the white population, which is bigger in this city than the black population, if they all say don't go to this town, then the only people who are going to create a revenue for the town are going to be people who are in the town. Like, no one's going to keep going over there. So the more and more you limit your economy, if someone's not going to want to open up a storefront there because of what they hear, that limits their economy. Because they don't have a lot of stuff around them. They have to travel to find work because the businesses in their town, just can't make a living. And then another one was how they were, it was hard to find a job coming out of slavery, because you'd be compared to, let's say, a white guy who was trying to get the job. Probably 10 times out of 10 back then, they were going to choose the white guy, unfortunately. So you limit them in their economy based on businesses and how they do in those towns, and then you take away jobs, and of course you're going to create a low income, society. You designed it like that. But I also think it says on page 199. The text refers to the black population migrating away from the South. Trying to find it to quote it, but it basically says how in the 90s it completely flipped. I guess in the 1960s even, after the segregation, the civil rights movements of the 60s, they still chose to live in primarily black neighborhoods, but still live in the South. And then once it hit the 90s or 2000s, then it all flipped, and then a lot of people started moving to the North. So, it's and a lot of it is based on economy, and I think most of it is planned. Obviously, they designed it like this to keep the minorities down and to keep white privilege up, which is it's messed up. That's not how society should run. But I think a lot of it is probably just they're trying to follow a good economy, and they don't really get a lot of it, so they kind of have to stick to what they know. But I think it's definitely planned by the government. I think that it's they know about it, and that's kind of with all the sleazy stuff about the real estate industry too. But